This is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Shoe. The Right Shoe is a podcast about the strange and unusual. Usually it references true crime, but not always. I must tell you this very strange and unusual case, and it's a very good one. They're all good, but this one is particularly strange. It's the story of Alex Miller and her apartment dilemma. Gets really weird. Actually tragic. Okay. Alex Miller was in Craigslist for a roommate. This brings me to Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love, but it's also the city of getting rent for whatever you can get away with while you're renting. That's the way you do it. I know so many people that either just played this game, they were constantly apartment hopping, or they would just try to get like the best apartment with, I don't even know how they would do it. They would have eviction notices on their credit report or report, whatever they download to check you out. They would have everything. Everything that was bad would be on there, and they would get whatever apartment they wanted. Meanwhile, I just remember apartment hunting was really hard. I couldn't stand apartments, so I am definitely a house person. I can't say that. I did like this one apartment a lot. This one apartment I lived in, it was like an apartment complex, but there was also condos in the front. So they kind of made all the apartments look like condos, and they were nice, and they had a pool. They had 2 Olympic-sized pools. I never went in the one because they had the lanes. I always went in the other. Anyway, I'm getting way distracted. This is about apartment. This is how the story starts. It's called, I didn't know this was a term, but it's called serial squatting, where you just go from place to place and you become a squatter, but you do it because you're using your words or you're playing games. This guy, Jed Creek, was trying to find an apartment, and Alex Miller was renting one on Craigslist. So he comes over, and he has a dog and a cat with him, and I think she had an animal as well. I believe she had a cat. She was like, he seemed so nice. He was a little pushy, but he had like a check on him, and that night they decided they were going to live together. He gives her this check, but she notices that the area that should say your address is blank. It says her address. It was handwritten in there, but he just did it. He wrote it in there, and it was her address. So that's bizarre. So she thought that was weird, but she didn't say anything of it. And, it's a real nice section that they lived in. They lived in the Chestnut Hill section of Philly, it's apparently called the Garden section. The Garden District. I hadn't known that before I seen it, but it is a real nice section of Philadelphia. It has, think like creaky floorboards and little nooks and crannies for rooms, old books. Chestnut Hill is very cool. I like it. It is a nice section. So they're living there, and she said everything for the first week or so was fine. She said they got along, they watched movies. One time there was like this guy over that I guess she didn't want him there or something. She told him to leave, and he was giving her a hard time. And then this guy, Jed Creek, came in and said, "You better get out of here." They got along. Everything was working out. So everything's going well. And then, so it was about, it said 2 weeks or something had went by, and the bills had come in, and they were $140. They were either $280 or $140. She had given the bill for $140, and she said, "This is your half of the bill." So I don't know if that was to be split or if it was already split. Either way, he looked at her and said, "We can settle this in court." So that's strange. You just move in with this guy. It's 2 weeks, not even a month. You give this bill to him, and he says, "We'll settle this in court." It's strange. And that's a very, what do you call it? Those are aggressive words. So, hostile. So she said, well, he didn't live here a month, so maybe he was just, watching his back or whatever. And she let it slide, but it gave her room for pause. And she did just become a little wary after that. But then things got weirder. First of all, the guy never had a bed. He came into the place and he just had like a bunch of blankets piled up, and that was his bed. Okay, whatever. And she comes in one day and all the lights are out of the living room. They're gone from the fixtures. And she finds that they're in his room. Also, the chairs from the dining room table were all taken out of the dining room, put in his room, and made into sort of a makeshift table. I would have loved to have seen this table, but the chairs were gone. So she's like, okay, I mean, and now she's getting irritated. She still didn't really say anything. I guess she was trying to keep the peace. This is another thing I come back to. I don't know. I have to be honest, I could never have a roommate. I don't know how people do that. I admire it. I wish that I could. I think I could now, older in life, but when I was younger, there was no way. I was very particular, and I just can't. I just can't imagine, because you don't know the person. It's hard enough to live with somebody that you know, and then you got somebody, I don't know, it just seems like it's rife for problems, but I know people, plus you don't always have money, and if you find a good person, that would be awesome, then you think of like Friends or Seinfeld, but otherwise, that is kind of crappy. So anyway, she's getting pissed off. And then comes the kicker. She throws a cigarette butt in the toilet. And I guess she came home and just threw the cigarette in the toilet, didn't even think of it. He says to her, "You're a paralegal." I guess this is what she did for a job. "Don't you know about the warranty of habitability? It apparently is like it means that you've done something so severe that it negates rent, or it negates the contract," which is ridiculous. But I mean, it is used in court for things that are serious. I mean, like say your landlord, I don't know, there was lead paint in the wall and you told him you didn't get rid of it. I would consider that serious enough for something like that. Not a cigarette butt. The only thing he had ever told her was that his family was nearby and that he was from New York City and he was a lawyer. That's what he told her when he moved in. And he did have his dog and cat with him. So she never really checked around too much. So she finally tells her mom and says, "You gotta check out this guy for me." So the mom background checks him, and I'm not sure how she found this out. She found out that his name was not Jed Creek. It was Jamison Bachman, and he was a serial squatter. And also that he had a slew of problems with tenants or landlords, and he would go in, and one lady, Melissa Frost, who was very vocal about this, said that he came in, he did such horrendous things to make her crazy that when they got into a fight, I guess it turned physical. Now, when you get into a fight, and I guess they either both call the cops or one of them called the cops. When the cops come, if whoever has a mark on them, the other person is going to get arrested. And if both of you have marks, then both of you are going to get arrested. Usually that's what happens. And that's what happened in this instance. It was a shame because he got a stay away order from her. So when she violated that, he got her, he basically was able to live in her apartment without her there. And he took her cats to a kill shelter. And then when she got out, I mean, she was a wreck. And he said to her, "Oh, you're a pretty girl. You'll have the life by the balls soon enough." Something to this effect. "This is my house now." So he literally just about took her own house from under her. And she said she was pretty much terrified. She really seems like there was several victims though, so I don't know who had it worse, but she was definitely the most vocal about it. I can't even imagine, like, especially with the cats, that sucks. So when Alex was finding all this out, she was starting to get obviously very nervous. The mom came over and she said to him, "This is my daughter's home, Jamison." She made sure that she knew who he was. So that was good, because she said his face did go ashen when she had said that. I mean, if you're uncomfortable in your own house, it's really got to be the worst stress. I've lived in apartments that were really bad. Most of the time, the one landlord was nuts. And the other time, the person, while I wasn't a bad person, he just he never slept. I think he smoked crack, to be honest. And he just was always up sawing and building things and driving me crazy. And I felt bad. Like, I really did. But he drove me nuts, and I just hated, you should be able to do whatever you want. So it just sucked that we had to live above each other, or I was above him, and it just didn't work. I was bad. So when you're in your own home and you're uncomfortable, that's a real shitty way to live. And she's probably going out of her mind. So, this is going on. She's getting, she's starting to like check things around when he's not there, and she's finding more and more about him. She does go into his room at some point and she finds bullets there, and she's like, oh my God, well, she doesn't see a gun. She just sees these bullets. They've heard for a 380 caliber, I believe. This is going on, and I guess tensions were just getting worse, and he was doing things to disrupt her life so bad at this point that she was like, I gotta get rid of this guy. I'll do anything. So she has this idea that, and after all these people got screwed too, she realized, you gotta get him out. So she decides to have this party, and she knew he hated rap music, so she started blaring rap music. Now he goes to the bathroom. All the guests said he started screaming in his room, like he was screaming at his computer or something. Then he goes into the bathroom and dumps this huge, I guess half the bag of kitty litter in the toilet with the cat shit in it. I know the toilet, there's a picture. I'm going to put it on the rightshoepodcast.com. I will put a picture of, there's plenty of them, but it's disgusting. So he does that in the middle of this party, and then he stomps out the door, which I was surprised to read that, because he seemed like he must have, started really snapping at that point, because he seemed like he was constantly had the upper hand. But this girl, whatever she did was the right thing, because she had him going nuts. He storms out of the house. Now he comes back the next day. So she's in the bathroom. He comes in, busts through the bathroom door, grabs her by the throat. She's trying to get out the door. She manages to get her leg out, and he stabs her right in the leg. So she calls the cops. Now he gets arrested, and that's, I was surprised, to read that, because he was starting to lose his cool and she didn't, where it seemed like the other times he always had the upper hand. It was good. She always managed to keep her cool. So he gets arrested. He's in jail. His brother Harry, who it seemed like they were from a good family, and it seemed like Harry was the oldest. Harry was the firstborn. Harry was, I think, the model child for their parents, and maybe Jamison was the second brother in both ways, the second child. And if he felt like that, and that's where that insecurity stems from. That's what I was thinking the whole time. Like, he has to be miserable, because when you're trying to make somebody miserable all the time, you're miserable. Like, there's something inside. You're not happy. Happy people do not try to make other people miserable. And that's what it seems like. He thrived off that. So he must have had like this deep insecurity, or just a lot of anger in him. So he's arrested. His brother Harry bails him out. But when they were meeting him at the precinct, Alex Miller got all his stuff together. She did bring his dog to another person while he was in jail, a person that he didn't know. And there's a judge that ruled that the dog can stay with the person. I guess he figured, he wasn't stable enough for a dog. Well, he was not happy, Jamison Bachman, when he got out and heard this. So when they came to give him stuff in the jail, after that was done, he came up back with his car and says to her, "I'm going to kill you, bitch." So she got him. I guess everyone was there. She got him on another breach of the stay away order. So that was, she was getting him good. That's for sure. I think in retrospect, she said she felt guilty, but I don't think she did. What else could you do? This guy was just crazy. So she gives him his stuff, and because of the stay order, he was back in jail. He was going nuts now, he was worried about his cat. I guess he was afraid that they would take his cat too. But his brother, Harry, bails him out again. So November 3rd, his brother has to go. I guess there's a grandchild was just born, and his wife had already went to see the grandchild, and Harry was stopped home after he had bailed Jamison out. He texted his wife, guess who's here? He never texted back, but his wife said, I knew it was, obviously Jamison. Well, he never came up. He never showed up. He's supposed to see his grandchild. He's not there. So the cops go to the house, and when they go in, at first they went and they saw the car gone, and they thought everything was okay. They thought he went to see her. He left. But when it was like hours and hours had passed, they went back to the house. I guess they broke in. There was blood everywhere. They said there was blood and glass everywhere. And in the basement door, inside the basement door, was the body of Harry Bachman. So Jamison had killed his older brother. And then he ran to a hotel down about 4 miles away. They caught him in there. He supposedly went without incident. Then that's when Alex, she said she felt like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. But she went to court because she wanted to see, she felt, I guess she was shocked about the brother. I wouldn't be. They get to court. The deputy comes out and says there's not going to be any court. Jamison killed himself 3 days ago in his cell. He committed suicide. I mean, I wonder what was going on that he seemed like he did this often. It was his thing. That's crazy. He's dead. Alex Miller said she felt really, really guilty. Everyone came to court, like all the people the victims, and they couldn't believe it. I mean, it's really, that part just blew my mind. Like, he was in his 60s, so he must have been doing this his whole life. And then he comes to this. I mean, this is it. This is what his life's become. He lost that time, So for Alex Miller, hey, that was all. I don't think that was a bad thing. I don't think it was good that he killed himself. I think that what happened was he'd been doing this his whole life. When he killed his brother, it was November 5th. This all happened in 2017. And it seems like he was, a serial squatter that was doing this his whole life. He finally met his match, or he was just getting old and tired. And I believe that when people are like that certain way, that he just got off on making people miserable. It just got old. And then when she gave away his dog when he was in jail, I think that's when he cracked. It was obvious that he couldn't get along with humans. So he was with these, animals to him probably gave him the unconditional love that he sought his whole life. And then he meets this girl who, all because of a party and some rap music. I mean, he snapped. And they said, they had these big banners that said, bye bye Bachman. She said that she had even brought over someone to look at the apartment and he wouldn't let her in. It was just a constant battle, something that you should not have to deal with, period. Why he killed his brother, that's even more. That just hit me. So he killed his brother. That is very, very interesting. It never hit me until just now sitting here. That's what it was. His brother, his whole life, had been a thorn in his mental side. His parents probably always favored the brother because the brother probably always did what he should do. As he was growing up, he just became, the shit child in his mind. And then it made him retreat further and further. And then he just took it out on other people. And that's why he killed his brother, and then he killed himself. God, it really is a psychological study in madness. It really shows you how deep, when something happens and it starts as a seed in your childhood, it affects you. Like, I have to say, I've been lucky in that when I was growing up, I had this we weren't rich by any means. We lived in a very tiny little Philly row home in Morrell Park. I mean, it's, It's just this little tiny neighborhood, but it was a fun neighborhood. I had great parents. We weren't spoiled in any stretch of the imagination. When we did something bad, believe me, my dad beat the crap out of us. Not beat us, but just, you do something wrong, whack. I don't know. It was a really nice childhood. I don't remember anything horrific happening. I remember some bad times, but they really weren't within my family. It was always like, with kids at school or something like that. Just, normal kid shit. I do notice that my friend, I know 2 girls that were molested as children. And to this day, they've just never gotten over it. Never. They've never gotten past it. They've tried. They've went to counseling. But it's still there and it still deeply affects them. So when you're a child and something traumatic, I mean traumatic, like molestation, rape, severe beating, I'm talking punches in the face, like that's bad, or yelling constantly, like you're bad. When that kind of stuff's going on, that affects somebody. They just can't seem to get past it. Where I've had shit, believe me, mostly self-inflicted, but I've never had something, I cannot think of anything in my past that like I couldn't get past. But that's interesting. They killed his brother. Because why? He bailed him out of jail. Why else would he have killed him? It just hit me sitting here. So that was a relatively short one. So I'm going to tell you a small story. My one friend's boyfriend, Mike, he was the same way. Like, he wasn't a bad guy. When we would go over there, he did a lot of drugs. And when she was with him, she did a lot of drugs. I wouldn't see her for weeks. I would be frantic. Like, where is she? What is she doing? And she just wouldn't answer the phone. And then finally, we would see her. She looked so terrible at that time. But he was, my God, whenever he would be at a party or anything, he used to drive everyone nuts. Like, he would just needle people. When you're messing with somebody so bad to the point where it's not fun anymore and everyone's uncomfortable, like, that's an issue that you have in yourself. And he used to do that. I mean, I remember this one party I had, and he was doing it to someone, and I freaked out. And the girlfriend comes running out, and she's like, oh no, what did you do now? Because it was constant. And then, I was like, whatever, just stop. Ultimately what happened was she did finally get away from him. And I remember after she did, it was fabulous. We used to go shopping all the time. I used to take her up Franklin Mills, and the Walmart was it was in this one section. It's different now. Now there's like a super center. But at the time, it was across the street. It was a small Walmart, and there was 2 stores on the either side. I don't even remember their names, but they had the coolest clothes. So inexpensive. And we would go there and just shop our brains out. And I was like, I will keep coming here. Just promise me you won't get back with him. And when we were in line one time at that Walmart, he came in and my daughter was little at the time, and he had given me like all these CDs, Tinkerbell movies. And he was like, oh, he thought that she was going to get back with him, and she never did. And when he finally realized that, because I think she was the one person that put up with him the longest, in 2011, I want to say, his brother walked into the apartment where he lived. And it was like some small 1-room apartment. His birthday had passed, and they were like, something's wrong, because Mike would have called us. He always called us on his birthday. 2 weeks after they found him, 2 weeks after his birthday, they walked into the apartment and they found him dead in his bed, and his body had been there for 2 weeks, and he was bloated, and like his brother obviously freaked out. I remember my girlfriend said to me, Deb, I hate that he died like that. Like, even though all that shit happened and, what he did to her and all that, she still said, like, he was always afraid to die alone, and that's how he died. Nobody even knew for 2 weeks, and that's sad. It is. That guy, Jamison Bachman, reminded me of Mike. I don't think Mike was as severe as Jamison was, but I don't know. He was pretty bad. And he used to do that shit with the rent all the time, constantly. You know, this is wrong, I'm not paying the rent. And he would go to court and he'd win every single time. And I used to say, and then he'd get these kick-ass apartments. I'm like, how are you getting these apartments? Yeah, it was amazing to me. Some people just have that, you know, gift of gab, the charisma. So that's what that story reminded me of. Next week, this one took me a little longer because I actually got to go to the beach. So but I have been working on Joey Coyle, and he is a true Philadelphia story. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to always hear his name. I didn't know who he was, but I knew he lived in South Philly, and I knew something happened to him because I heard his name. That one might be coming out a little quicker because I already know the story. I just got a few books just to get some of the details that I wasn't sure of. So that was the story of Jamison Bachman. When I had first read that, it was on this tiny little calendar. It's the calendar of crime, and each day there's another story, you know, just a little blurb. As soon as I saw the little blurb, it was literally 5 sentences long, and I was like, I gotta read into this. And I could not believe it. I thought, oh my God, what a crazy story. So that's back to back, 2 Philadelphia guys. And this is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Shoe.